Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Yo, what's happening, Rush Nation? Tried something new there. Not sure if it worked or not. You let me know in the comments. If you are watching live, thank you for dropping in. If you're not watching live, head over to YouTube, hit the like, the bell, subscribe button. Make sure you are watching the pair of us and the Dynasty duo when they do go live too. It's Thursday. We're a bit late because it's my mother's birthday. So shout out to Mama Stocks. Happy something birthday. Rude if I tell you that. I think that's how it goes. Although these days I'm not sure if you're allowed to keep that sort of information secret in the free world of information.
Well, 21. 21st birthday, yeah.
Well, that's what she did tell Hunter. So that, let's say happy 21st, Mama Mitch. Big man, how are you?
I'm all good. Another week in the books, heading for a long weekend. And I'm taking Tuesday off too. So I'm taking a 4-day weekend because I'm a baller. And why wouldn't you?
Exactly.
So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, man. All good. Health-wise, it's still trending okay. Doing the physio, doing the fitness training, doing the cardio, doing the running now. Couch to 5K.
Woof.
Into week 2. So yeah, all good. And then listener leagues are all, I think, drafts done. Just got the Patreon league going and the Champions leagues, and then I've got a few drafts left to do. But yeah, we're near the end of draft season now. This is sort of the biggest 2 weeks of drafting of the year, and I kind of feel like a senior at this point of the season. Like I'm ready to check out.
Mate, I'm done before it started. I got to this point. A couple of other leagues popped up. One being the Patreon league. Shout out to the patrons for having me for the first time. And I've suddenly found myself in 6 redraft leagues at once, and I absolutely bleeping hate it. It is horrendous. It's just too much going on for me to actually enjoy them. Does that make sense? Like, it's just.
I was in 18 a month ago in one time.
Nah,
so yeah,
I'm sorry. It felt like a fun idea, and it's actually trash. It is trash. So if you think I've drafted a bad team, it could well be because I have everybody. I'm sorry. It's just there's too many drafts going on at once. And the good thing about the Patreon League is it is a flex frenzy, right? So it's harder to get wrong in air quotes because people can fill in whenever I need them to positions.
Well, to give you an idea, in the Patreon league, so as you say, it's super flex frenzy. We are into round 9, end of round 9. My team consists of 3 quarterbacks and 6 wide receivers.
Mine is
got no running backs, no tight ends. Why would you have them? No need for them. So yeah, there's custom scoring. There's a reason why I've gone wide receivers. At some point, I might pivot, but I'll read your team in that because I don't think your team's that bad. Actually, I quite like your team. You went Jamar Chase, Kirk Cousins, Saquon Barkley, Matt Stafford, Jonathan Taylor in the 5th round. Steal. TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones, Damian Pierce, and Desmond Ridder. You've just taken Desmond Ridder, to be fair, and there's not many quarterbacks left for your 3rd. So
no, because it was super flex, and I had a look at quarterback, and it was pretty much Desmond Ridder or no one, and I thought
I think but even Baker Mayfield went before him. So literally the QBs left on the board: Trey Lance, Will Levis, Carl Trask. So yeah, he was the last, or Colt McCoy. So literally the last starting QB, although you could have Colt McCoy for a couple of weeks, but that doesn't get you through your buys, which are week 13 and week 13 and week 10. So yeah, good move to pick up Ridder.
Well, I had to.
My team in that, I started very different. Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott. And then I've gone CeeDee Lamb, Chris Godwin, Deebo Samuel, Kyler Murray, Deontay Johnson. It's very much a Murf on brand team. Christian Kirk and Michael Thomas Slant Boy in the 9th round. So,
is this a best ball league, Murph?
No.
Okay, that's fine. It's
a set lineup, but yeah. So 6 wide receivers, 3 quarterbacks, no running backs, no tight ends.
Fair.
If I don't have to take a tight end, I'm not going to take one. In the EFFC, because the tight end scoring was so premium, I don't think people clocked on. I took 6 tight ends. So I feel like I've kind of balanced them out. Because I took 6 tight ends in one league, I'm going to take very little in another league.
Yeah. I asked you the question the other day. If Justin Tucker was to score 6 points more, 6 times more points than Patrick Mahomes over a season, which round should I take him? And you said the first. And nobody had taken a kicker until the 4th. So I punched Justin Tucker in the 4th round. And I did think to myself, should I take another kicker in 5 to cover Tucker's bye week? But I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to take another kicker in 5 as it felt dirty in the 4th.
That's fair.
Shout out to Neil Elliott. His knockout redraft league. I think there's 6 tiers of knockouts now, and there's the Premier League, and then there's 2 first divisions and 4 second divisions. There's a stupid amount of teams in it. Somehow I was in League 2 last year, finished middle of the pack and got relegated to League 3. So I don't know how that happened. It was annoying, but here I am in League 3. But the team, the drafters I was with last year in League 2, it was such a good draft. We've splintered into our own redraft now. So we've got a redraft from that, and then I'm also been relegated with half the league, it seems, into number 3. So we've all been tagging each other all over the place in different leagues because we just got confused as to where we are each or not. So you just get the same person tag me on the clock. I'm like, no, Matt, it's not me. That's the other league. And it's like, it's crazy. It is crazy. Do you know what, Murph? Isn't crazy. Tell me you have opened your Manscaped package and used it. Tell me the hedge trimmers.
Honestly, I feel so bad. I have not. As you can tell, the length is even more than it was. So I was planning to, and then life gets in the way, especially when you've got a 4-year-old, and you've got a 4-year-old at home. So yeah, and my wife is off work at the moment, so that also makes it a bit harder because you've got to fight even longer for bathroom time. So yeah, no, hasn't happened yet, but I will do it, and I'm probably gonna do it tomorrow, and I'll be fresh for you, my friend, when I see you this weekend.
Well, I'll tell you what won't get in the way of life, Murph. It won't get in the way. The beard will not get in the way of the hedge trimmer anyway, because that thing is like a lightsaber for beards. It's ridiculous. I haven't used it again since. I have used the lawnmower. I used it on my neck at the start of the week. It's Thursday, and my 5 o'clock shadow comes by 9:05 in the morning if I shave at 9 o'clock. But, Rush Nation, if you do want to get yourself a lawnmower 4.0, a hedge trimmer, a handyman, balms or creams, head over to manscaped.com. When you check out, don't forget to add 5 yard into your basket for 20% off and free international shipping. Get yourself trimmed up for the end of, I think it's Ibiza's closing parties this weekend. So if you're heading out, get yourself some Manscaped.
Your live draft, if you're doing a live draft this weekend,
Even
or
better.
Next weekend. If you're doing it next weekend, this weekend might be a bit hard to get it there in time. But next weekend, if you got a live draft next weekend, get on the site, use the code 5 yard, get your 20% off, and look box fresh for your live draft. Because you know what? You looking box fresh might put someone else on tilt. They'll be like, man, he's got a good looking beard at the moment. How's he doing it? You might distract him. It might give you that edge to win you your title.
That's it. Last week we had Debo Samuel taste the rainbow with the Skittles take. Has he got 10? He's got 7. He's still happy. This week, get yourself a Manscaped and rabbit in headlight someone in your live draft with how good your beard's looking. And you can only do that with Manscaped, Rush Nation.
That's right.
5 yard in the code, save 20%, international shipping. You're welcome. Thanks for winning your draft. Just another way we bring you ships with sharp beards. Okay. It's a mailbag episode, Murph. This one has, I suppose, blindsided me because I didn't have time to look at it until recently with the blindside news in the news, I suppose, with what's going on. That felt like a cheeky little dig right there. How many questions? I'm not even going to ask how many questions because they keep rolling in as we are literally doing this.
I think there was 15 or 17, but you've put weird spaces in that's kind of extended them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15 questions.
Excellent. Also, apologies, Rush Nation, if you are listening to this and my voice starts to go. It is because there was a lot of shouting at work today. I managed to give not myself a puncture, but I blew the side out of a tile wall on a rough mower next to a green. 3 tons of machinery sitting there at just before home time. So I had to call in the troops, and it took us quite a while to get that thing moved. And it was loud. And yeah, so the first question, Murph, is from Rob. I'm assuming this is our own Cowsill. He says he has a question for you and Stocks. So I guess it's for me and you, Murph. So he says, in your opinions, this is a 2-part question, I think. In your opinion, what is the time in the year-round cycle of the NFL when you A, find the best value in trading for fantasy? I'm assuming that's a dynasty question, right? And then B, are likely to get a response or action on trades? Are those two at the same time, different times? And what would you do to make sure they could be at the same time? I have a very brutal answer to this question. So I don't know whether you want me to go first or
I
second.
want you to go first because I like your brutal answer because I might have a similar brutal answer. I might have a slightly different brutal answer.
So answering the first bit, A, the best value in trading and fantasy. All of these have the same answer for me, and that is it is league specific, and you cannot shoehorn these answers into the same league year in, league out, because if you play in a league full of like-minded people who are active, then I think the value for me is when you've seen the news after the draft or just before the draft, or whenever you can find that gap that other people in your league aren't looking at the news. That's when I think the best value is. But then I think people in the league who aren't looking at the news aren't active, so it's difficult to get a response to the trades that you throw out. And unless you were in a seriously active league where everybody's looking, then you'll know from your own personal take on that league when the best time is. I can't sit here and say, Murph, the best time for your Buccaneers league is then, or it's really difficult for me to say that. So, and I don't think you can ever align them unless you were in a really active league.
I would, I tend to agree. What I would say from experience is that I go with a sort of two-part for the best time for values. If you're selling dynasty picks, I think the best time to sell dynasty picks is probably in that 2-week window before the draft, because that's when everybody's read up on the rookies and rookie fever starts to take over, and everyone's seen the combine, everyone's really excited about a particular player, whether it's Bijan. Like if you're holding the 101 this year, you could have got an absolute boatload for that pick probably 7 days before the draft because everyone went Bijan crazy. So I think for me, selling dynasty picks a week, 2 weeks before the draft, after the combine, in particular, once everyone's had time to digest and get read up. Buying dynasty picks, I would say that lull period between the Super Bowl and free agency is a good time to buy. Because everyone's kind of switched off. People are probably sort of feeling the disappointment of their team, and maybe you can sell a veteran for a better price if it's someone that's coming off a good season. So you might get good value there. As for players, I think that one's a bit more league specific, format specific as well. But free agency is a good time. You can tend to buy low and sell high in free agency based on the news of certain players. If you're really smart and you understand that because a certain player's landed somewhere, the opportunity might not be as good as the reporting might say it is. So, there's that opportunity there to really make some value there. And then in terms of the second part is likely to get a response or action for trades. I would say this: if you're in a league where people aren't responding to trades, your commissioner needs to put in a trade response deadline rule. So I've done this in a couple of leagues where if someone hasn't responded to a trade within 7 days, then there's a penalty. First one's just a warning, but then after that, it starts to get sanctions of draft picks or fab dollar deductions and things like that, because it's just not on. Like, you get it. People probably aren't in the football like as much as say we are, and therefore probably aren't living it 24/7, 365. But at the same token, if someone's made the effort to put in an offer, I think a week is a fair timeline in the off season to respond. In season, it should be a lot shorter because people should be checking more frequently. So, if you've got that problem where people aren't responding, then speak to your commission, put a rule in with some penalties. I think that's something that needs to happen. By the way, what is that hat?
This is a Utah Raptors hat. Yep.
Toronto Raptors, you mean?
Potentially.
NBA
yeah, Toronto
basketball?
Raptors. Yeah.
Let's do the right team justice, right? Okay.
That's fine. Who was
Toronto,
the other
yeah,
one?
Toronto. Okay, so you're going Canadian tonight. You should wear that next week for next week's guest.
Well, I will do. This is one of the 2 lids my sister bought back from Utah for me, so I thought I'd put it on. And the sick thing is, it's quite small on the snapback, so if Hunter flips it all the way the other way, it actually fits him too. So it's 2 for 1.
Sick. Love that.
There you go.
But that's my answer to that question. It's a good question, though, Rob. I do like that.
It is a good question. The next question is from @that_UK Gator Guy. That's a difficult to get your tongue around in one go. And he says, with Corey Davis's retirement, what does that do for the wide receiver room in New York? Do you anticipate them making a trade to bolster or going next man up? And that's from Ryan, who is @that UK Gator Guy.
Do you want me to take this?
Yeah, you go for it.
I don't think it makes absolutely any difference whatsoever to the wide receiver room. You have to question the timing of the retirement. Why would you retire 2 weeks before the season? Why would you go through all of training camp, because we all know that the fitness, the diet, the training is the worst part of this, right? So why do all of that and not get the payoff of playing? Because you're not going to play. Ultimately, there's a conversation that's been had at some point, or he has come to the realization that he's not going to play. And so he thought, what do I do now? Do I go on to another team, or do I just call it a day? Have I had enough? And so, yeah, Stacey's just put it in here. Maybe he was going to get cut. And I think that's definitely a possibility, that he was either going to get cut or he was probably going to stay on the roster and do very, very little. Either way, I don't think he was making an impact. So therefore, what do I think about a replacement for the Jets? I don't think they're going to bother. I think they'll just take one of their UDFAs or one of their draft guys will take a spot. I think that's literally going to be it. And I think he's basically just decided that now's time. Because, you got to remember, it didn't end brilliantly for him in Tennessee. Playing time went down. He's gone to the Jets. Hasn't gone brilliantly at the Jets. I mean, without being horrible, Corey Davis is a great player, right? Had a great career and showed a lot of promise. Never quite fully delivered it. But he still had a great career. He's been in the league, 5, 6, 7 years. He's done well. If you think that the average NFL player cycle is about 3 or 4 years, he's done well to get to where he is. But at the end of the day, he's not going to be relevant on rosters anymore. I think his agent probably was making some calls. He probably knew he was going to get cut or he wasn't going to play. They realized there wasn't really a market for him. I think he thought, you know what, I just can't bother. Because I think if you retire at the start of the season, then I don't want to play anymore. I'm done. You don't go through all the training camp and all of the fitness and all the dietary restrictions and everything else and then quit 2 weeks before the end of the season, before the season starts. You just don't, unless you're not going to play or you're going to get cut. So that's why I don't think the Jets are going to do much. I think they'll just keep what they got. I don't see them going into the free agency market and signing. I mean, they might sign someone to a league minimum deal, but I don't see them really doing much that's going to make any difference. I think they've got their guys.
The saddest part about Corey Davis's retirement, Murf, it now means that 75% of the original studio will have retired from the NFL. Do you know who all 4 of them are? Don't ruin it if you do. And who's left? And Rush Nation, if you're one of the OGs from the original audio video days back in the studio times when Murf and I used to get together to do this, put it in the comments if you are watching right now, and I will reveal the answer by the end of the show. I just want to know if anybody is out there watching right now who remembers. And Murf, have a think. I don't know if you know who it is or not, but
I can. What, the one that's still in the league?
You're still in the league.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I remember a couple of them. The one in the league, I think I remember them all.
Okay. Well, don't ruin it.
I definitely remember the 2 that aren't in the league anymore.
Okay.
So I won't say yet, unless you want me to say now.
No. Let's see if anyone pops into the comments.
Yeah, I definitely remember the 2. No, we'll give it. I'll tell you what. We'll answer the next question and then we'll go on. Okay. This one is.
Go on. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, you read it. This one's an interesting question.
I have a clear answer for this. The question is from Rob, and that's at Rob_TLS. And he says, how do you set an auto draft queue when you are on the turn? For example, you need a tight end with one of your next 2 picks. Do you set your queue with your favorite 4 or 5 tight ends and risk taking 2 tight ends, or set the queue with 1 tight end and risk not getting a tight end at all this round? I absolutely hate setting auto pick queues anyway, because it's just on Sleeper it's terrible and it doesn't really work. But secondly, if you are near the turn or on the turn and make 1 pick, you're automatically doing 2. So you would take 2 tight ends if they were first and second in your queue. And secondly, if they're not, and you a third say, and you leave it an auto but don't queue up more than 1 or 2 players, you end up with just random people then by accident. Like it happened in our Epsom League the other day, Murph. I accidentally left it on overnight, and because the draft was so slow, I just hadn't checked back in. It was still on auto, and I can't remember who I picked now, but it was a wide receiver. Didn't want them, so I got rid of them, which makes sense because the commission did a good job there. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But yeah, so for me, I never set an auto queue because I think I'm checking my phone so much with everything going on that I can see when I've got a pick. But if I did need a tight end on the turn, I definitely wouldn't be setting an auto queue because I wouldn't want to take 2 in the go.
Yeah, I have similar thing. So yeah, on Sleeper, I think it's the worst feature on Sleeper is the queue. It doesn't work, as you say. It's just terrible, terrible all over. So yeah, I like this is where people absolutely hate My Fantasy League MFL, but this is where it is much more elite. So you can do round by round queues, so this doesn't happen, and I don't understand why Sleeper have not done this. But they need to. They need to have this set up so that you can do round by round drafting, so that you don't have this problem. So I've told Sleeper about 60 times now. I've given up. But yeah, I would definitely do like on Sleeper. I wouldn't set a queue if I was on the turn, unless I was taking the same position twice, or if I knew where I was. Basically, if I was on the pick before, so like if I was on the 101 and then the 102 was coming back, and so the 102 was picking, then I'd probably do a queue, because you can. But yeah, I wouldn't be on a queue for that reason because you can't execute it. But other apps, like I said, like My Fantasy League and NFC, probably no one plays on NFC, but yeah, you can do round by round queuing, which is much better.
Yeah, the round by round queuing on MFL took me quite a while to get my head round. And I think that is it really baffles me how in its essence, MFL is really good, but I hate using it because it is so un-user friendly.
Until you watch my 14-minute video of how to use MFL and have it set up so it's completely user friendly.
Well, I haven't seen that and didn't know it was a thing, but I still hate it because I haven't watched it. But I'll try and find it. If you could send the link,
you can upload your own rankings so that you draft off your own rankings, and you can get it set up so that effectively you never need to go into the site, except for following a link that's in your email. You literally hit a link in your email, and that takes you straight to where you need to draft. It's brilliant.
Well, that's what I do. But then I found that my Gmails weren't always coming through, so then I had to star one and use the same link for the draft in that email.
Okay.
But
that might be just the way it was set up. So in the video is settings. If anyone wants that video, hit me up and I'll send it over. It's good. I'm biased.
Yeah. Pitsy hits us up with the next question. Biggest fantasy bounce back? Goodness gracious, that is a very broad question.
Yeah, it's really broad. I mean, I'll go first. For me, it's Deebo Samuel, wide receiver, 38 in PPR last year. That's not happening again. I know he missed the last 3 games, or he missed 3 of the last 4 games. But yeah, Deebo Samuel is going to massively smash his ADP. He's going to massively smash wide receiver 38. I have him in my rankings at 9 or 10. Because of the fact he is going to get rushing attempts. He's in a good offense. It's a stable offense. They're going to move the ball well. He's going to be the lead in that offense. I don't see a reason he can't be a wide receiver 1 this season. I've got him aggressively ranked. As the patrons say, they didn't realize how high I was on Deebo until they saw my ranks. Yeah, it's Deebo Samuel for me. I see him jumping at least 25 spots on where he finished last year. So that's my fantasy bounce back for 2023.
I like it. I've got two. I've got a selfish one. One of them, Javonte Williams, because I really hope his 7th round value at the minute is far exceeded when we've seen Sean Payton running backs. And then the one I had for the answer to this was Deontay Johnson. We talked about it last week in the value show. You don't not score 0 touchdowns 2 years in a row with that many receptions. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, he's one of mine. He was wide receiver 28 in PPR, and then I've got one more, which is Drake London, who was wide receiver 31 in PPR. I expect him to bounce back into a top 20 at least. So there's a couple for you there to pick out from.
Just had a sleeper notification come through saying the Dolphins are one of the 2 teams who have made a trade, and they are definitely looking to get it done. Feel the most motivated to get the deal done, shall we say? So
that's your Devin Akane chairs just literally hitting the floor if that happens. So someone
crazy.
told me the other day they're really excited about drafting Jeff Wilson, and I was like, yeah, good luck to you on that
one. fair play, friend.
Whether you've related to him. Can't say I've ever been excited to draft Jeff Wilson in my life, but there you go. Horses for courses. This is why we like fantasy football. Mace has said that the first time I used MFL, it took 15 minutes to figure out how to draft someone. Fair. It is a better, once you know how to use it, for me, it's a better app. It's a better experience, but
with all the money, just make a decent app. I don't need colourful color. Just if you had a slightly better app that was 75% of what Sleeper is to use as an app, then MFL would annihilate everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. It would. I do agree with that. It does need to improve its user experience, but if you're one of these fantasy degenerates like me, where you play custom leagues, and also if you do, what's really good is if you're in a league which is an international league, i.e. you're the only one in your region, then it's so much better to draft it on MFL because you just don't have to stay awake for picks. Yeah. Like you said, if you're stuck on the turn on Sleeper in an international draft, guess what? You're going to have to either wake up in the middle of the night to pick, or you're going to have to stay up. I mean, it's really frustrating. Whereas if you are that person drafting in a predominantly American league, hey, guess what? I can set my auto queue round by round, set for the 2 rounds on the turn, pick the different players, and then I can just see who I picked in the morning. And that's pretty much, I'm in a league now where I've done that pretty much every day. So I've not made a live pick. My draft time is at 0 minutes and 0 seconds. Go me, phenomenal effort. 16 rounds in, 14 to go.
Well, there you go. Rush Nation, if you are watching this live, if you could share the link out and stuff, let's get some more people into the room. Let's get some more questions asked. That would be fantastic. Next up, Stacey has asked a question, and he is: who is the rookie that is low on the radar that you think would be a good late draft candidate? I'm assuming this is a redraft question, Murf. What do you think from Stacey, this one?
It's Michael Wilson for me of Arizona because
he's
free. He's free, completely free. So, yeah, for me, this is easy. He's the wide receiver 2 in Arizona. Utilization and usage through the preseason has been really, really good. I don't see him being a fantasy stud here. I don't see him being someone who's going to finish in the top 24 wide receivers, but I think he's going to have flex appeal. I think he's definitely going to be good enough for bye week cover. I think you're looking at someone who's going to finish somewhere between wide receiver 35 and wide receiver 50. That's kind of where maybe even wide receiver 55, which doesn't sound glamorous, and it's not. But when you're thinking those late rounds, there's not many there. If the names that you're out there, Jalen Hyatt, but there's so many. I mean, he could break out through there. Justin Ross is there. Marvin Mims.
Damn it, stop saying names.
Well, no, I'm just saying names because I'm giving you some names you can pick up on and pick because I just took your guy. But yeah, Michael Wilson for me is the guy who I'm scooping up in the last round of drafts because he's going free and he's not on anyone's radar. But yeah.
Yeah, love that pick. He was going to be one of 2. I'm going to cheat a little bit and use Mims, not because Murph just said him, but because Jerry Jeudy's just gone down with some sort of injury, got carted off. Massive shame. I think we now, with Tim Patrick's injury, somebody else is also injured. I think our 3rd starting wide receiver currently is Karan Hinton. I think he's currently wide receiver 3 on the fit depth chart, which is when you think about how many receivers we had at the start of the season, then we drafted Mims, and now we've got Corton, Sutton, Denzel Mims, and Karan Hinton, and then some other jag. Kendall Hinton, sorry.
Most famous for playing when Drew Lock gave everybody COVID in the quarterback room. He came out and played a half of football at quarterback for the Denver Broncos and was absolutely miserable. And everyone thought it'd be a really good idea to play him at wide receiver because you thought you get quarterback points. And I think he finished with like -2 points.
I mean, he was not prepared for that. The kid, bless him.
No, I mean, deer headlights and it was woeful. It was funny but woeful.
Yeah. Okay. Ryan's next up, and his question at @that_UK Gator guy again hits us up with: who's your favorite QB2 to become QB1 this season?
Do you want to go first?
Do you have a list of the QB2s in front of you that I can pick from?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to go off the Fantasy Pros ECR consensus, right?
Stay on brand.
So yeah. Well, they pay the wages, so they keep the lights on here at Murf Towers. Kirk Cousins, Geno Smith, Anthony Richardson, Aaron Rodgers. Jamal Adams has been activated from the pup. There you go, Seahawks fans, fly high. I know Mace is watching, so you'll love that news. Jared Goff, Russell Wilson, Derek Carr. Matthew Stafford, Jordan Love. I'm not going past Kenny Pickett. I'm sorry. I don't care about the rest after that.
That's rude.
None of them are. Well, I mean, Kyler Murray maybe, but it depends how many games he misses.
Yeah. You could have stopped at the first one for me. I think Kirk's top 12 this season, easy peasy with the way they're going to throw the ball about.
Way to reach there. You've gone for the QB 13. Oh, he's going to break into the top 12. Jump that one spot. Break that glass ceiling, Kirk. You could do it. Revolutionary. Jump that one spot above expected.
Listen, you can pipe down, Sonny. Said your favourite QB2. And considering I seem to have drafted all of the Kirk Cousins that ever was in any of my leagues, I'm really hoping.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I'm going to be someone who's going to go a little bit. I'm going to be really wild here, and I'm going to go Jordan Love. It's a toss-up for me between Russell Wilson and Jordan Love. I think Russell Wilson's going to run it close. In fact, I actually, in my ranks, have Russell Wilson above Jordan Love. But I'm going to be slightly contrarian because we don't know what Jordan Love is. We just don't know. He could be this guy who absolutely smashes it out of the park. Don't forget, he was a first-round pick. They've kept him around 3 years, and they've traded Aaron Rodgers and given him the keys. They didn't bring anyone else in to compete for the spot. This isn't like what happened. Tom Brady retired. You got Kyle Trask underneath, and they brought in another veteran. That veteran's beating him out. Same thing with Trey Lance and Brock Purdy. They brought a veteran in. All right, Brock Purdy's won that job. But effectively, they brought in competition for the role. They didn't do that here. So there is a lot of faith here in what Jordan Love can do. And this organization, this coaching staff drafted Jordan Love. There's a lot of investment in him. They've kept him on the payroll for 3 years and not played him that much, which makes me think there's got to be... Everyone's down on Jordan Love. We don't know what he is. So I think I'm going to go with the lottery pick and go with the guy we don't know about and think there's a chance that he can just be brilliant and be a top 12 QB. Like, similar progression to sort of Hurts. And no one saw that coming. But if you want to go with the more traditional pick, I think Russell Wilson is a good shout to go there in a Sean Payton offense. He's certainly not going to be anywhere near as bad as last season, but let's go with Jordan Love. Okay,
I like that. I like the process you went through there to prove that he's the next Aaron Rodgers after Brett Favre. It was well done. That was right, wasn't it? Rodgers took over from Favre? Yeah, there we go. Right. This question confuses me. I would like to know both yours and Stocks' top picks. That's all there is. There's no name sent in from the ether.
No. It's Pitsy's question because it's the following question as well was linked to that.
So it's a two-parter.
Yeah.
So is this two questions or?
I think it's two questions. But I think what he's saying is actually the second question kind of supersedes the first. So he's like, who are your top picks? And then if you had the opportunity to take your team first before everyone else drafted, who would you take? Or at least one in each position. So basically, who's our top player at each position if we had the first pick in every round?
In every round, or just the first five picks?
In a free draft board. So, like, if we were filling our roster with one QB, one running back, one wide receiver, one tight end, Kelsey, one kicker, one DST. He put Kelsey in there. So, like,
he didn't even put tight end. He just put wide receiver, Kelsey, kicker.
I just deleted tight end. But yeah, because I don't think there's any debate. We would both take Kelsey, right?
So,
tight end.
so Pitsy, if you're watching, jump into the comments and figure this. Because come on, mate.
It's the best player at each position if we had the first pick at each position.
Oh, my goodness gracious. How do you want to do this? Do you want to just reel off your 5 and my 5? Or
I think quarterback. So you go first at quarterback. I'll go first at running back. You go first at wide receiver. We'll nullify tight ends and both just agree it's Kelsey because there's no point. So I'll go first at kicker. You go first at DST.
Excellent news. Okay. Oh, quarterback. I'm going to take Lamar. I reckon Lamar's going to be the best quarterback this year.
Love it. I don't have I would go Josh Allen, but I'm very, very happy that you went Lamar and not Patrick Mahomes. I love that. Yeah, I have Lamar Jackson at 3, but yeah, I have no problem with that one because I think he could easily finish at the 1. But I've gone Josh Allen just because he's been there and done it, and I can't see any drop off. Okay. Running back for me, it would depend on the format. PPR, I'm taking Austin Eckler. Standard, I'm taking Christian McCaffrey. If it's 0.5, it's really close. I'd probably toss a coin. And that coin would probably, if I had to make a strong decision, I'd go Eckler on the health. Just think he's more likely to play a season with his usage all the way through than McCaffrey, but I think it's close in half point. But PPR, Eckler, Standard, McCaffrey. Yeah, that's where I'd be.
All right. I'm going to swerve slightly, and I'm going to go with another off-the-wall pick. I'm going to say Saquon ends up as running back 1 this season because I think after all the running back drama of money this season, Saquon's on a 1-year deal. He's going to want to have the biggest year anybody has ever had to say, look, I can still play football, come pay me. Yeah. And I think between Lamar throwing the ball 100 more times than last year and Saquon on a mission to get running backs paid, those two are the picks I want at running back and quarterback.
Couldn't hate either of those. With you. I think again, I think Saquon's my 3 again for that reason. So yeah, totally with you with that. Right, you're a wide receiver.
Oh, Jamar Chase.
Wow. Okay. This is where we will differ a bit. I can't get on
That's
board
fine.
with that.
That's fine.
I mean, it's going to be JJ. There's no debate. But I actually have Chase at 4. He's my wide receiver 4. I can't see any way in the world that Chase, and it's not because of talent. I just think T. Higgins is good. He will eat X amount. Irv Smith will eat X amount. Tyler Boyd eats X amount. I just can't see a pathway to where he gets to be the wide receiver 1. So, yeah, Jefferson for me. But yeah,
it's fine.
Tight end is Kelsey. Are you not going Kelsey?
Oh,
going with a different yeah, I mean, come on, it's not even worth it. I'll kicker Justin Tucker. I mean, why would you go anywhere else?
Yep, same. Carry on.
Yeah, I mean, the only other person I would have is Evan McPherson. I think he's the only one that can challenge.
Wait, is that because Jamar Chase is scoring all the touchdowns?
Well, I think Everton's going to get a few this year. I think Joe Burrow might have something to say about that.
Fine.
Yeah, so you're back to you, DST.
Oh man, I don't think I've only picked one DST so far this year, and I picked it in the last round, and I can tell you who I picked because I literally just picked them. I picked, God, I want to say Seattle. No.
Detroit Lions.
No.
Houston Texans.
I picked Seattle, yeah. I picked the Seahawks.
Okay. Cute.
Yeah, there was no one left.
Okay. So is that who you take?
I couldn't even tell you. I'm going to say Pittsburgh. I think their defense is pretty sick. They've had a top something defense. We've talked about this. I'm going on past reference. Who's the best DST?
So the best DST last year was the Patriots. The Patriots tend to always finish in the top 5. Give me the Patriots. They're going off the board at DST 6, by the way. So massive value.
So hashtag value.
Hashtag value brand. Cowboys are officially the 1 and the Dolphins are the 2 on ADP.
Right.
But you have to pay 4 rounds, 5 round premium on them. Just give
me
the Patriots. Yeah, just give me the Patriots. It's easy.
Okay, next question comes in from Joel. and it says, who is at Born on Fire. That's quite a good at. I like that. Why the rise in Superflex teams? I always thought fantasy sports was about putting a team together. I've looked and not one team starts 2 QBs at the same time. Does Joel mean about real life?
Yeah. Why do we play 2 QBs in fantasy when there's not 2 QBs in real life?
There's probably
I'd go back to Joel and say we don't start 2 running backs in real life, but we play 2 running backs.
Well, you can start 2 running backs.
You could start one as a halfback and one as a fullback.
I mean, if you want to go even more crazy, then you could have a look at the Army and Navy games playing Wishbone, and that could be 3 running backs or 3 quarterbacks at the same time. No one knows what's going on over there, and that's real life.
There you go.
Excuse
me. Is this real life or is it just fantasy?
Well, I think, my friend, we've found that highlight in the middle, and we're doing both at exactly the same time.
Look, the reason Superflex is what it is because quarterback play was boring. Is exactly as Mark has put, because there aren't 32 team leagues. I mean, there are. They're
ridiculous.
They're ridiculously boring. I've played a few, don't like them. It just takes all the skill out. It becomes a luck league for me. But yes, there's not 32 team leagues, but also, it's just basically outside of the top 3 or 4 guys. Quarterbacks can be quite predictable, pretty boring. They don't really make an influence. And considering it's the most important position in football, Superflex is designed to make it more relevant. It's the same way that we changed the scoring in tight ends to tight end premium to make tight ends more premium, more in line with a need to draft them, because people like me would probably not really put any consideration into drafting a tight end anywhere up a board if there wasn't any reason to. So that's why people make tweaks. That's why there's Superflex leagues. That's why there's tight end premium. All of these are designed, which is why for me, the Superflex tight end premium leagues is my favorite format, because it makes all 4 positions relevant.
Yep.
Because then you've got a strategy. Because then you've got some people that will value the tight ends, some people value the quarterback, some people value the running back, some people value the wide receivers, and then all of a sudden you've got many different paths to find. That's why for me, that's the best format, because it creates the most strategic outcomes. There's many different ways to build a team, whereas in a 1 QB standard league, there's very few ways in which you build a team. It's running back heavy, draft a QB either up high or at the back end, and then you draft a load of wide receivers and you pick up a tight end at some point.
There you go, nailed it. And
it's the same every year.
The quarterback you grab is Kirk Cousins, everybody, because he's going to make that push into QB1 this year.
Yeah, he's going to break that glass ceiling from 13 to 12. Let's do it, Kurt. Have that.
Well, I'm hoping for.
I think he was
more than 12.
He was QB1 last year, to be fair.
Hey, look. Next question is from Paul Picken. Paul says, how do you play the tight end game? Do you go early for elite? If so, who's the guy you want at cost? If you wait on them, who are you targeting as a later round pick? I suggest going back a long way into the catalogue and having a listen to the great tight end debate of 2018 or whenever it was. One of the best episodes Murf and I have ever done. It had much adulation and controversy at the same time. Now, it's Kelsey. We talked about this, Murf, and you feel that Kelsey is now somewhat of a hindrance in drafting your team. Although if you do want a tight end,
I just think it's harder. I don't think it's a hindrance. I just think it's harder. I'm not against taking him in the first round. I get the positional advantage. I just think you've got to draft like a god the rest of the way to do it. I'm not against it as a play. I understand it. I've done it as a play, but you've just got to draft. You've got to back yourself. You've got to draft like a god all the way through. Because I do think you suffer a slight hindrance in the early rounds. You can overcome that 100%, but you have to do that with panache and some skill. My strategy, this is really, really simple. Occasionally it's Kelsey. If not, I can't be asked with the tight end position. I just, in no format does it ever interest me in taking a tight end, because so for me, what I've just said about Kelsey. If you're going to take a premium tight end, so that's Andrews, Pitts, Kittle, Hockenson, and maybe Goddard, you're going to have to pass on a really good player to do it. And I don't think you get. I can argue you get the value with Kelsey. I don't think you get the value with the other 4-5 players I've just mentioned. So I can't take a player there. Now, funny enough, I was in the draft the other day. I got Dallas Goedert in the 10th round of a Superflex draft. I was like, thank you very much. I will have him there. That's great value. Unbelievable value. I'm not against taking these players, just not in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th round. If they fall around 8 round, 9 round, 10, I'm interested. I'll get in. So for me, I'm jumping in at that range and I'm taking pretty much Pat Freiermuth, Evan Ingram. It's Ingram first or Pat Freiermuth. Occasionally I'll dip in and take Schultz. But outside of those three, El Komet kind of be's a bit later. For me, I kind of go Kelsey, forget everyone else. Freiermuth or it's basically Freiermuth or Evan Ingram. And then if I skip them, I'll go down and I'll chase one of Chig. Mace just asked about Waller. I'm passing on Waller. Don't like the age. Don't like the fact he's on a new team. I'm not paying his cost. No way ever. No, thank you. So I'm out of any tight end in that range, that early to mid range. Just I'm out. Unless it's Kelsey, he's the only one I'd go in for because he's the only one that gives you any significant positional advantage. I just think Waller's going to finish 40 points ahead of someone like Ingram at best, and you're going to get Ingram 5 rounds later. Yeah, it's not hard for me. I'll take the positional value of what I'll draft in those rounds and take a later guy. And yeah, if I miss, I'll take Komet or I'll take Chig. If I miss those guys, I'll take Everett. Once you get past tight end 6, they're all guys. And then you're just thinking about who could break into and give you a slight positional advantage. And it's who's going to be a bit safer with the touchdowns. But yeah for me, someone's just put here, Mark's just put only 3 compete for tight end 1. I don't even think it's that. I think it's Kelsey. Kelsey's going to have to get injured to not be the tight end 1. And I just think everybody else, as he says there, it's just so little separation. You're just not going to get the points per game value out of anybody else. It just doesn't happen. Look at all the people that have jumped in on Kyle Pitts the last couple of years. They've been left floundering. I'd like to see how many championship teams there were with Kyle Pitts on it. You would have to have drafted like an absolute god. I just think you make hard work for yourself. The tight end position in regular games, in regular formats, just doesn't matter. That's why tight end premium leagues are so much fun because it adds the strategy. In a standard PPR league, it doesn't matter. It just is. It's an irrelevant position. So I just, don't really give it much credence. To draft one guy, might draft a backup, might not draft a backup. It really kind of depends how I feel, and then go from there. If you want to be a real, like you want to fade the position completely, like I have done in drafts, then my favorite combo is a Noah Fant, Cade Otton duo, because I think both those guys catch touchdowns this year.
One touchdown.
Completely. Well, I think they catch multiple touchdowns.
Oh, right. Okay.
I think you could punt. I think if you want to punt the entire position and literally take them in the last 2 or 3 rounds, then I like a Fant Otton combo for me. Nice. Although the only problem is they do have the same bye week, so you have to then think about who you're going to drop for a week. But I think outside of that, they're quite a cool duo to have. Or an Everett Fant or an Everett Otton. I think cool. I think Otton now with the Russell Gage injury is someone who's a big arrow up in terms of touchdowns. Don't think he's necessarily going to catch a lot of balls, like maybe 40. But I do think he'll score your 6-7 touchdowns, which is relevant for weeks.
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty much exactly the same, although I have found myself with a couple of Mark Andrews shares. But I don't know why. I've just thought, he seems nice here, and I've picked him. But otherwise, my teams are pretty much Kirk Cousins, a quarterback, and a Okonkwo at tight end this year. So I've done what we decided I shouldn't have done, Murf, and I've got pretty much the same teams all over the place again because they just keep falling to me, and I just can't help but take the same people. It's a curse. It's a curse. Next question is from @th_fantasy_NFL. Their question: when data and common sense go out the window and biases kick in, which players will you always target when you know you shouldn't? And which players, if any, can you never bring yourself to draft, even at value? I don't know if
Murph's always AJ Green.
Stop it. Look, he's even still there. If you can see that as a tiny figurine of AJ Green on my bedside thing, whatever they call that in the 70s.
Always AJ Green.
And then you're like Spock. You're the fantasy Spock. I'm not sure data and common sense ever both go out of the window when you're drafting, right? That's never a thing.
No, but he's asking like who would you draft almost no matter what. His one was mine. He actually put in the chat in the tweet after this. His was Robert Woods. That would be mine. Robert Woods seems to be the guy I just can't seem to ever give up because I always feel like the talent is there and he's always lands in a situation that's relevant enough. Like he's looking at the wide receiver 1 on Houston. Like, yeah, I'm taking spins on Robert Woods. He's free. Like, why wouldn't you just take a spin? So yeah, I think he is probably mine. And then the ones I'd never draft. I mean, I don't really have a do not draft list, but if I did, it would probably be like George Kittle. I'd never draft George Kittle. I'd never draft Darren Waller anymore. Well, but I did in the past.
Your draft list is anybody who's above value on your rankings. That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, so there's certain players who this year I just won't have anyone. I won't have any of. Jahan Dotson won't be on any of my teams this year. In fact, he made it onto one team because he fell so low. I was like, yeah, go on, I'll have a spin. But pretty much Jahan Dotson won't be on any of my teams. Khalil Herbert won't be on any of my teams. Jamar Gibbs in particular. So Jamar Gibbs is my guy this year. Will not be on any of my teams because there's no chance I am drafting a co-running back in the 3rd round or the 4th round. Not happening. See you later. People are just too high on him for me. So Jamar Gibbs this year is one of he won't be on any of my teams. And probably Bijan. Bijan won't be on any of my teams because I won't pay a 1st round draft pick for him.
Fair. Mine's AJ Green.
I'm not saying he's not working, but yeah. Yeah, AJ Green is yours. Always has been. Will be. It'll be to the end of time.
I don't think I've got anyone this year that I felt that I've had to get in my team. But again, I've got so much Kirk Cousins and so much Chig that they're almost my guys.
Well, this year I've got so much Chris Godwin because he's just, for me, a massive value. Like, I just think his value is ridiculous. Like, he's going to catch between 90 and 100 balls this year. And he's going off at like wide receiver 30 to 35 in drafts. Like, it's stupid. The value, and Deontay Johnson's another one. He's ending up on a lot of my teams for very, very similar reasons.
Same. I've got quite a bit of Deontay. And the guy I don't want anything is Marquise Brown. I just don't want the wide receiver for the Cardinals, and I don't want to pay the cost that he's currently at, even if it is so low for somebody of his potential.
He does drop a lot in drafts. So, like, I got him in the 9th round of a draft, and I was like, yeah, I'm taking him there. Because at that point, I don't care. Like, I'll take a wide receiver 1. And if it doesn't work, it's a 9th round pick. I don't. Like we talked about this last week. I don't care if it doesn't work. I'm not paying the 5th round, 6th round price on him, but I'll pay the 9th round price on him all day long. Because I think at that point, if he does 3/4 of what he can do, he'll be a very return ADP. But yeah, I'm with you.
That's true.
That cost is too expensive.
Shout out to Pitsy. He's just sent me a message saying, sorry for the confusing question, but you guys nailed it. So thanks very much, Pitsy. Appreciate it. Next question. This is from Stacey. Does Kenny Pickett finish as a top 15 quarterback this year? That's a hard no from 5 yard. We'll move on. Next question.
Absolutely. The only way that Kenny Pickett finishes as a top 15 QB is if 6 or 7 QBs get seriously injured this year.
If Drew Lock does the rounds, is what we're saying.
Can we just get Davis Mills to Tampa already and be done with it? And then Davis Mills will be a top 15 QB. Oh,
there we go. Right. Next question is from Mason. He got greedy and asked 1 to 12. There's a fair few questions in here. We'll do this quick fire, Murf. Who is the Giants wide receiver 1?
You got a coin?
I'm just going Jalen Hyatt.
I think it's different. Well, what's your definition of a wide receiver 1? Who finishes? Is it who finishes highest? Who catches the most balls? Who's the first read?
Stacey, you're in the chat with the zipped mouth emoji. What defines your Giants wide receiver 1? And then I'll give you an answer for that.
Well, no, that wasn't his question. It was Mace's question.
Mace, sorry. He's also in the chat. Mace, come to us.
Stacey's zip emoji was because of the Kenny Pickett comment, I imagine. So look, if it's about who's going to be who's going to be like the wide receiver one, as in the most likely to score the most points, then yeah, I'd go with Jalen Hyatt. If it was who I think is like the first read going to get the most catches, I would go with Wan'Dale Robinson if he's fit.
Yeah.
I'll caveat that with an asterisk if he's fit.
Next one.
Yeah.
What will Isaiah Simmons' role be in New York? For those who do not know, the Cardinals traded Isaiah Simmons to the New York Giants, former first-round pick. I think he went 7 overall to the Cardinals, 8 overall to the Cardinals.
He was an absolute combine freak. Did the 40 and 4.39. He tested like an absolute machine. But the problem is he doesn't have a set position. So this is a good question for me.
He was a safety linebacker sort of duo combo. Didn't quite know where he was playing. The Giants, according to what I've seen today, have got holes at linebacker. So I'm assuming they're going to play him at linebacker to fill in those holes needed.
Yeah, I can see that. I think he fills in at either. I think he's either going to be the strong safety or he's going to fill in at inside linebacker, but not the Mike. I think you'll see him rotate. Basically, I see him being a rotational piece that will basically fit in for injuries. I could see him playing a little bit at nickel as well. But yeah, I think there's some holes in that secondary, and I think that Isaiah Simmons is going to rotate around. I don't think you're going to see him play. If I had to put this is where he's going to play the predominant snaps, I would say strong safety, but I guess we'll see. But great utilization pickup. He's cost nothing. He's going to be better than who you draft in the 2024 7th round. So I love it for the Giants. I think it's smart, but I think you're going to see him all over the field. I really want him to nail a position. And I think for me, strong safety is where he probably will find a home. Or free safety, but I don't think he's going to play free safety in New York, but we'll see.
No. Next one. Well, not next one, but the last question is: which Washington running back would you rather have?
We missed Dak. You missed.
No, I didn't miss Dak. I'm doing this one first because I think we both have the same answer, and it's Brian Robinson.
Yeah, all day long.
There we go. So last question. I didn't miss it. Does Dak finish as a top 10 fantasy player this season? I think so.
I think he's cusp.
Yeah, I'm going to say 10.
No. Yeah, okay. I'm going to say no. I just think there's going to be a slight arrow down with Kellen Moore going. I don't love the Schottenheimer McCarthy duo. I think if he becomes a top 10 fantasy QB, it's because CeeDee Lamb has literally pulled him there through his own talent. Because I can't see, for Dak to be a top 10 QB, CeeDee Lamb's got to finish as a top 3 wide receiver.
Wow.
So if that happens, if CeeDee Lamb becomes a top 3 wide receiver, Dak will be a top 10 QB. If CeeDee Lamb is not a top 3 wide receiver, Dak will not be a top 10 QB. That's how I'm going to position that answer.
That's fine by me. I'm saying 10, no higher. So he's on the cusp, as Murf says. Right. David Hilton has 2 questions. The first of which is there a particular type of receiver that breaks out sooner rather than later? So within the first 2 years. And when looking, breaks out sooner rather than later when looking at rookies year to year. And if so, is it as simple as landing spot or collegiate target share, etc.?
Do you want to go or do you want me to go?
I'll go, and then I think you can layer it with, you can finesse my attempt at answering this question. I don't. Over the last few years, the type of receiver mold coming out of college has changed. Mm-hmm. So we used to see the big-bodied receivers. You know, DK Metcalf came out, and everyone was like, "This guy is massive." And then you look at the years after, and these guys are all tiny. You look at Devonta Smith. Who else is really small that was drafted?
Chase is pretty small.
He's not tiny.
Not tiny, but he's
JJ was
Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, Jalen Waddle. That was the one I was thinking of. Jerry Judy's not a massive guy. CeeDee Lamb's a bit bigger. And this year they're all tiny except Quentin Johnson, who's massive. So we've seen the shape of wide receivers change from college, and we always say the NFL follows college. So I don't know if there is an answer for the last few years to say whether there's a type of receiver, because the type of receiver coming out has changed. I don't know. What do you think about
Well,
that?
I would say positionally, typically the X receiver has tended to be the one that's been the most successful. You look at Chase, JJ, Smith, um, Waddle, they're all the X, right? So, like for me, that X receiver profile is the one that's more likely to break out. We haven't really seen too much of a slot guy come in and dominate.
Sorry,
You
Josh
could argue,
Downs.
pardon?
Sorry, Josh Downs.
Yeah, sorry, Josh Downs, Alec Pierce. But having said that, JJ's kind of moved into that kind of hybrid slot role, what you'd call the Larry Fitzgerald / Cooper Cup role. So you could argue that he's more in a slottish kind of role now, but yeah, other than that, you're not seeing slot guys come in. So really what you're looking for is a typical or an atypical X, someone with a bit of pace. You don't have to necessarily have the blistering 40 time, but they can't have a slow 40 time. You're not
Yep.
seeing these guys have 460, 470 40 times. They don't need to be in the 4.2s, the 4.3s. In fact, we're not seeing those 4.2 guys and the low 4.3s dominate either. They seem to be in the 4.4, 4.5, seem more the 4.4s. It's kind of like the magic number range for wide receivers at the moment. Landing spot, irrelevant, doesn't matter. Don't get deceived and think landing spot is important for wide receivers. It's not. Draft capital is more important. You're seeing these guys that we just named, Waddle, Chase, JJ, Smith, they're all first round picks. You know, typically now these wide receivers are going a lot higher. Olave, Garrett Wilson, again,
There we go.
X profile receivers, fast, quick, not necessarily the biggest guys, but they're all going in the first round. Drake London, I think, will be a big guy this year. I think you'll see him. He's a slightly bigger guy. I think you'll see him do better this year. First round pick. No, first round isn't a guarantee. Look at Kadarius Toney, but you're more inclined.
Corey Davis.
Yeah, but you're more successful with those first round guys. Second round guys, I think you're seeing. You know, DK Metcalf you mentioned is one. There's a few that have been in the second round, but
T. Higgins
is at the top of the second. I mean, he's the first pick of the second round, so you know he's almost the first round pick in his own right. But yeah, there's a few guys in that second round. But we used to see in the older era, we used to see third round, fourth round guys really smash it. Chris Godwin was a third round pick, who was an absolute steal. Michael Thomas was a late pick. Tyreek Hill was like a sixth round pick. Antonio Brown was a sixth round pick. I mean, like these guys.
Fire up, Chips.
Yeah, we're starting to see the fact that actually the draft capital is really superseding and is an indicator on talent, because we're not seeing as many of those lower round guys be truly successful, whereas they were previously. So I would say that's your indicator. First round guy with a sort of 4.4-ish speed, a little bit either side is fine. Typical X role. And I think if that's how you're sort of modeling it. So yeah, I think that's the landing spot is irrelevant because the league changes so quickly. It doesn't really matter.
Yep, fair. And then second part of the question, how often does existing talent win out after a regime change? E.g., will the Texans let Pierce have a fair crack, or is it inevitable he get replaced with Singletary as their guy? Also, what change has the biggest impact at player level as far as fantasy production is concerned, head coach or offensive coordinator, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cracking question.
That's a beaut for an hour in.
So let me start with saying that Pierce was drafted by the same GM. So there is investment from the current organization in Pierce. So I don't think this is the best example for this question because Pierce is their guy. The coaching staff don't ultimately get involved with player acquisitions unless they're a Bruce Arians type. Someone's been around the league a very, very long time. They will have a significant say in the types of players in free agency they will go after. They'll have a say, but ultimately the GM is the player who is his role to assemble the roster. He is judged by the quality of that roster, which is why you'll see a lot of GMs get fired before head coaches, because it's all down to whether or not the GM has done a good job in assembling a roster. Now, if it's deemed that the GM has done a good job and the team has not done that well, the coach is getting it. If the coach has done as well as he could have done, but the roster stinks, the GM's getting it. That's typically how this goes. So the GM, Nick Caserio, in this case, in the Houston Texans, he drafted Pierce. So he is invested in his outcome. So I don't think this is a great example. I think Pierce is going to be a lock for the I wouldn't say like the whole role, but I think he's going to get a lot of it, as we talked about previously. But if you had an example like, let's think of a GM change recently. Who's a fairly new GM in the league? Well, I don't think there were many GM changes last year. I'm trying to think of one.
I've got nothing for this.
Yeah, I'm struggling to think of a GM change this year. I'm sure there was one, but I can't think of one on the top of my head. So I'll go back an extra year. Maybe the Colts. I think the Colts changed GM fairly recently, did they not?
No, I should be the one looking this up whilst you.
You look it up. I can't remember off the top of my head. But no, Ballard's been there ages. That's what I'm talking about, not the Colts. Who am I thinking of a recent GM change? Jets was a couple of years ago, wasn't it? Yeah, Jets might be a decent example. But no, I think the Jets took both Carter and... Anyway, yeah, Douglas has been there a few years. So he was there 2019. Okay. Going back to the value of this. So in terms of if a new GM had come in, he will always go with his guys over the guys he inherits unless talent does prevail. So I can think of an example a few years ago when Atlanta changed GM. And then obviously they started to clear house at every single position. Nick Caserio did the same with the Texans. So they'd rather have their guys as opposed to guys that held over because the talent was poor on the roster.
Sorry, Matt. The Cardinals changed their general manager. Monty Ossenfort is now general manager, and Jonathan Gannon is head coach. Obviously,
Okay,
Cliff Kingsbury.
So, yes, of course, because Steve Keim, did he either got promoted or he got promoted, right? Weirdly. Or did he finally get fired after all his indiscretions? Because he had a few. The Keim bomb himself.
The Keim bomb can't see. Don't know. Doesn't say on this report I'm looking at.
So in this scenario, right, with a new GM, they didn't really draft too much, did they, in terms of offense, which tells you they're in a rebuild year. But they could be inclined to move on from Kyler Murray if they don't think he's the best player, but you could also see him sticking around because of his talent. I would say that very much it's a case of a decision gets made by the GM. Talent will hold X amount. So you look at players that have held on through multiple GMs. There's several out there. Someone like Mike Evans, for example, he's held through how many head coaches? I think he's probably had about 6 head coaches, and he's probably had a couple of GMs as well. He's an example of someone who, because of his talent, will hold a roster spot until he really falls off a cliff. Certain players like Tyreek Hill won't matter. So I think you've got a certain amount of talent will always prevail, but if there's a question mark over the talent, then they will always go with their guys because that's the guys that they're staking their careers on. Whereas they get a pass on the old guard. They're like, well, we inherited those guys. We gave them a year. It didn't work. We're going to move on and get somebody else. So, and then the last part of that question is, what's the biggest impact at player level as far as fantasy production is concerned, head coach or offensive coordinator? That determines purely on whether the head coach is an offensive-minded or defensive-minded head coach. So if it's an offensive-minded head coach, someone like Shane Steichen, for example, who's moved to the Colts, that to me is more significant than who he hires at offensive coordinator. Whereas when it's a defensive-minded head coach, so say, Dan Quinn, if he got another job, for example, if he became a head coach again, I'd be more interested in who the offensive coordinator is, because in a lot of cases, the head coach, if it's an offensive-minded head coach, will determine how the offense functions. So again, you look at Bruce Arians versus, this is the best example. So Bruce Arians, right? Very offensive coach, quarterback whisperer. He coaches the team to a Super Bowl, coaches the team to a playoff the following year, where if they'd beaten the Rams, I'm convinced they would have gone all the way again. In a really, really close game, lost it on the last play. He leaves. Todd Bowles, defensive coordinator, comes in, keeps the offensive coordinator, and the offense takes a massive step backwards with pretty much the same personnel.
Defense.
So that tells you that the offensive coordinator wasn't that great and the head coach was carrying him. So that tells you that an offensive-minded head coach is a really important hire. So that question, it seems like a bit of a cop-out. If it's an offensive-minded head coach, that's more important than the coordinator. If it's a defensive-minded head coach, then it's the coordinator that matters. To carry out that even further, you've got some amazing offensive coordinators. So people like Kellen Moore. So Kellen Moore going to the Chargers massively arrows up that offense for me. So I look at that change, even though they've stayed the same at head coach. They've got a defensive-minded head coach. They've changed offensive coordinator. They've now gone from Joe Lombardi to Kellen Moore. That offense for me gets a massive arrow up because of who they've got in play and calling the plays.
There you go. Good answer, Murph. There was one more general manager change this year, and the Tennessee Titans hired Ran Carthon.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never heard of him.
No, I'd never heard of him. I'm trying to think. So they brought in Nuke Hopkins, right? So didn't like. I mean, I'm not saying they had a problem with Traylon Burks, but they again have brought in a talent to supersede what they've got on the roster. So that would probably give Burks a slight arrow down. Or maybe they just don't see him as that alpha role. They want to put him in that B role, which is kind of where he was drafted anyway. And then have an alpha next to him in Hopkins. That makes sense. So can see that being the play. They haven't really drafted anyone else that all they've done there is they're looking at the future quarterback with someone like Will Levis. So they brought in a guy to compete, and they're giving Ryan Tannehill his year. And if he doesn't do well, they'll move on from Ryan Tannehill. But they haven't really brought on anyone else to compete on and Chig. Chig's there now.
Chig.
So, well, no, he was brought in last year, but they've backed him. But again, he'll probably be replaced if he doesn't do well this year.
There you go. Right, Rush Nation, it's time for the answers to the quiz about the studio shirts. Murph, who were the 4 shirts on the wall in the studio?
Lev Bell.
Lev Bell in the Bumblebee.
Yeah,
correct.
Bumblebee. Corey Davis, obviously mentioned.
Yeah, mentioned.
College jersey, right?
That was Corey Davis's college jersey, correct?
DT. Demarius
God
Thomas.
rest your soul.
God rest your soul. Broncos jersey.
Broncos jersey.
And then I believe the other one was Michael Thomas.
Correct. The only lasting, if you'd have said that, Michael Thomas, the only jersey who's playing in the NFL but hasn't really played in the NFL over the last couple of years. It's crazy.
Do you know what? I just feel good I got that right, because that would have been embarrassing if I got it wrong. That was the one I wasn't overly sure about. I remember, and then I was thinking, I'm sure we had a Thomas wall. So I remember the order behind you was Demarius Thomas was the far left, then it was Michael Thomas, and then it was Corey Davis, and then it was Lev Bell.
There we go. And if you are listening and wondering what the devil we are talking about, go back to YouTube and find one of the real early videos, because you can see what we look like in the studio when this was almost a legit BBC production.
I might post a picture on the Twitter machine, or the X machine, now I should call it.
Well, there's definitely got to be. There's loads of pictures, isn't there, that we took back in said day.
Fun.
That was pretty good, Murph. Enjoyed it. Mailbag questions that we managed to nail down.
Yeah, enjoyed that. We'll always answer questions on the show, so drop by on the live stream, and we'll answer as many questions as we can. We've got an incredible guest next week coming to us from Buffalo, New York. Our favorite Canadian of all time, Justin Boone, is dropping by the house. He is only here for 45 minutes, a slightly shorter show next week. We've got to let him go by 5 to 8, so because he's got another show. But very lucky to have him this close to the start of the season. So bring your questions. we're going to talk a bit more strategy and get you ready for the final week of the season, the final drafts of the season. So, or final week of the preseason / final week before we get football back. But yeah, can't wait to have Justin back on. We're going to start getting some more guests on as we go through the season. So also reach out to me at Murf_NFL and tell me who you want to get on. We're going to get some guys on this season. I'm looking forward to getting some of my favorites back.
There you have it. There you have it. Mailbag. It is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. Mailbag in the bag. That's probably not the best way to say that, but hey, all done. Locked. That's it. UPS that somewhere else. Don't use Royal Mail because they...
I was going to say Postman Pat.
That's a niche British reference right there. For anybody who's not listening, Google Postman Pat. All will be answered. And Rush Nation, if you... Jess, if you want to support the podcast, head over to Patreon. Head over to patreon.com/5yard. You can subscribe for £1 a month, £1
a minimum of £1 a month. You get access to the Patreon casts, exclusive content, and our co-pilot a team with you, and you get to join our WhatsApp group with some awesome people. So yeah, lots of fun to be had.
Right, indeed. Shout out to those of you in the chat on the live stream tonight. Big yourselves up. It was awesome. Murph, I will see you bright and early Sunday morning, my man. But as always, Rush Nation, don't forget, keep rushing.